Now, this video title is somewhat provocative. The Sermon on the Mount is misunderstood. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that people in this life go searching after self-help. They go searching after answers. They go searching after gurus, methods, ways of overcoming their thoughts, their anxieties, their depression, their problems. But what often goes overlooked is that in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus Christ's most famous moment in the book of Matthew, in secular popular culture and otherwise, what he explains is that everything begins with your thoughts and ends with your thoughts. And I never saw it this way until I went through a period where my thoughts were very difficult for me. But it really cast the Sermon on the Mount in a new light and showed me an aspect to it that I never saw. Because when you have lines like, if your right arm offends thee, cut it off. If your eye be darkened, what is the light in you? I mean, these are very mysterious sayings until you view the passage as a whole and you view the scriptures as a whole and the Bible as a whole, where you understand that spiritual warfare goes on in the mind. It begins with the mind. It begins with your thoughts. It's not about something going on outside of you. It's not about judging your neighbor. It's not about fighting with people. It is about the adultery and the murder inside your own thoughts, inside your own mind. He who looks upon a woman lustfully has committed adultery. What is that saying? It's saying that your thoughts are where the kingdom of heaven comes into being or withers away. That's what it's saying. He who has anger towards his brother has committed murder. What is that saying? It's saying that murder is envy, resentment, hatred of your fellow man, your fellow human being. That is committing murder. It's the same thing, because it all begins with the mind, because the mind is a spiritual, noetic battlefield. And when resentment and hatred win, the demons win. And Satan was a murderer in the beginning. Satan was a murderer before the world existed. How is Satan a murderer when there's no one around for him to murder? Because he is full of anger, hatred. He has no mercy in him. He's full of envy. He's full of resentment. This is what you see in Cain. It's the same exact archetype. So the war begins in your thoughts, where you can live according to Satan and Cain, or you can live according to Christ. That's what Christ is saying. I mean, he's saying so many things in the Sermon on the Mount, but that's something that goes overlooked, where it really begins with your own mind. And you have to treat others as you would treat yourself. You would want yourself to be treated, but you have to have the courage to forgive yourself as well when you fall short of these things, because God wants you to forgive yourself. He doesn't want you to go about hating yourself. That's what the devils want. And every time you fall short in your mind, Satan wants you to curl up into a ball and begin to hate yourself and begin to torment yourself and let the intrusive thoughts flood in and go backwards and get washed away in the flood like the Nephilim were. Okay, that's what Satan wants. God forgives you. Christ forgives you. But understand that when you affirm these things in your mind, when you let these thoughts get the better of you, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And you are denying the kingdom of heaven within yourself. And then now this is very intense, because if you're given over to rumination, if you're given over to depression, if you're given over to despondency, Christ just told you where the battlefield is and where the game is being played. Christ just told you, when you're reading the Sermon on the Mount or listening to it, he told you where the battlefield against Satan is. It's inside your own mind and soul. So when you fall into despondency, when you hate yourself, when you resent your neighbor, look at what you're doing. And it goes further. It goes even further than that, because what's said is that the evil of the day is sufficient unto itself. Give no thought to what you will eat or clothe yourself with tomorrow. The evil of the day is sufficient for itself. We don't think like that. We want to plan everything. We think we're going to fail unless we map out our lives for ourselves. We don't think we can just trust God and trust life. But Christ says that the birds sing. Look at the birds in the sky. They don't gather up into barns. They don't have forced thinking, what Carl Jung would call forth thinking. foresight. They don't do any of that, and yet they are fed and cared for, and they're fine. And we who are to name the birds, we who are human beings who name and master nature, are we not to be just as confident? Are we not? And he says, even Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon, who knew everything, was not arrayed so fine as the lilies in the water. The lilies in the water had greater wisdom than Solomon. Now, all of that is to say that the rumination, the depressive thoughts, the going backwards into your own mind, that is all what Christ is talking about on the Sermon on the Mount. He is speaking explicitly about these things. He's talking about what goes on in your own mind and soul. And so, understand the game that you're playing. Read the Sermon on the Mount. Listen to it. I don't do it enough. It is self-help beyond self-help. What it's giving you are the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven is within you. And if you give in your mind to these negative, spiraling thoughts and forces and doom and despair, you're closing off the kingdom of heaven. And it's such a terrible burden because we all want despair. When things aren't going our way, we want to give in to despair. But that is why Christ puts you through those things, so that the work can be done in the right way, in the right moment, in your mind. Your mind. In the wisdom of Sirach, it says, more have fallen by the word than by the sword. In James, it says that, the tongue is a very dangerous thing. The tongue creates fire. The tongue, for such a small thing, is so powerful and so dangerous. And it's all the things that the self-help gurus want to tell you. This is what's so unbelievable about it and outstanding about it to me, is all the self-help gurus, the things that they're saying are, if you tell yourself that you're worthless, if you tell yourself you have no value, that's what you're going to be. But if you tell yourself that you're a child of God, that you deserve the good things in life, that you are a good person, that you are enough, and you are, then that's what you are. And protect me from useless words is a thing that appears in so many Orthodox prayer books. Lord, protect me from useless words. By saying this, am I participating in the kingdom of God, or am I taking the side of Satan and his angels? What are these words doing? Words are very important. Jesus Christ is the word. When people say, oh my God, oh my word, someone says, oh my word, they're saying, oh my God. It's corny, it's weird, but then what are you saying about the Sermon on the Mount if you think that that's corny and that's weird? Because what Christ is saying is that your thoughts assemble and disassemble heaven stone by stone. And these are living stones that you're dealing with, so be very careful with them. Be very mindful of them. But don't overthink them. It's not what people think it is. It's not what people think it is. People think Christianity is something that's like against the self-help, that you need to go to the self-help gurus because Christianity doesn't have these things, doesn't have these kinds of answers. Listen to Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives by Elder Thaddeus of Vitoknica. I'm butchering the Serbian name of this town. But what he says is so much in line with the Sermon on the Mount, as it should be. But it is about purifying your mind, purifying your heart, purifying your thoughts. Your thoughts do determine your life. If your thoughts are all negative and desperate, you're negative and desperate. And if Christ is putting you through a season like that, you need to make peace with that and learn that. You need to learn the Sermon on the Mount. It's a blessing. Don't you see it? You get to understand the Sermon on the Mount in this way. If you've gone through these things, if you have anxiety, if you have ruminating thoughts, if you have depression, despair, if you have all these things, and you listen to the Sermon on the Mount, you're not going to walk away unaffected. You're going to see that what Christ is saying is just for you. So, do not lose heart. Christ knows exactly what you're going through. exactly what you're going through. And the kingdom of heaven is yours to preserve in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit. The lilies of the field, the lilies in the waters, the birds in the sky, these are wiser than the thoughts. And this is the last thing I'll leave you with. This just blew my mind in the book of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount. This just blew my mind. Christ asks, why do you take thoughts for raiment? Why do you clothe yourself with thoughts? They're not yours. Those thoughts aren't yours. Christ is offering baptism. In Galatians, those who put on baptism put on Christ. But you want to put on thoughts, you want to put on worries for your raiment instead of baptism. Instead of Christ, you want to put on worry and fear. Is that the kingdom of heaven? Be mindful of your words. Be mindful of what you say to yourself. St. John Chrysostom says, the mouth is double fenced in by the teeth in the lips, because your words are so powerful. Do not say things that are untrue about yourself. Do not put yourself down. Do not speak the evil. Do not speak evil. And that's what I have to say. The Sermon on the Mount is so much simpler and humbler than anyone, well, not that anyone thinks it is, but that people think it is, that I thought it was. Before I went through certain experiences and was able to read it again with new eyes and really just see, look, it's about what you're going through. And Christ wants you to see it just like this and in this light. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Do it now. Smile. Go about in a good disposition. Elder Thaddeus was talking to this divorced woman who was so upset. And what he said to her was, your thoughts made your husband leave you. If you want to be happy again, sing. Go about and sing like the birds in the sky. Sing. That was an Orthodox Christian elder who ran a monastery. That was his advice to a depressed woman. I almost said widow. A depressed divorced woman. It was to sing. So sing.